This is K-Pop Sunday, brought to you by your K-Pop Sunbaes before you have to go back to work on Monday. We are your hosts, OldR,
Serin,
Ma'am,
and JR.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. We've finally made it to the last episode of the season before the December yearly wrap-ups that we do every year. That's why they're yearly. As I mentioned last time, today is part 2 of our 2-part retrospective on the show that created Monsta X, No.Mercy. We'll be discussing episodes 6 through 10 and talk a little bit about where the eliminated trainees are today.
To refresh our memories, in the last episode, Yusu and Kwangji were eliminated, leaving us with 10 remaining trainees. The current ranking from 1st to 10th place stands at Juhon, Shopgun, Kihyun, Seogwon, Minhyuk, Hyungwon, Mingyun, Shonu, Wonho, and Yuno.
Jumping right into it, episode 6 aired on January 14th, and the main thrust of this episode was setting up the third mission, a 5v5 battle. The beginning of this mission was touched on at the end of episode 5, but we decided to mainly talk about it here just to keep things cohesive, because the show didn't do that. The mission includes 1 vocal stage and 1 performance stage. The losing team will have a single trainee eliminated. The team leaders were chosen, and then the team names were also decided. Team 1, or Ojangnam, consists of leader Shonu, Juhon, Hyungwon, Minhyuk, and Mingyun. Team 2, or Segero, consists of leader Wonho, Shopgun, Kihyun, Seogwon, and Yunho. This episode has 1 performance by each team, the vocal-focused one, and then ends teasing the next performances and the eventual elimination. The winner of the vocal performance portion is Segero, winning 4-5. The biggest article topic release after this episode was aired was the fact that Judge Gaen found Juhon to be attractive, and 7 articles or more discussed just this one singular moment in the episode, and I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, let's talk about our thoughts on this episode.
I just have to say, Guide is so pretty in this episode.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Just stunning. Beautiful. 10 out of 10. Loved it. That's all.
One thing about these shows that kind of bothers me is that they'll do deliberations with the trainees standing right there, or at least they make it look like that. And that stresses me out as a viewer. So I would imagine that the trainees are also stressed out. And I'm just just let them go back to the green room or something. Why make them stand there and watch their future unfold before them? Also, another funny thing that was highlighted in this episode was that K-Will brought up a picture from his past when he was a lot younger of him having braids. And listen, there's a lot of idols that don't look great in braids, but it just does not fit his face. And he knows that. That's the whole point of the comment he makes. But if you want to see something funny, look that up.
I will say, though, I like who they chose for leaders, because it felt like they were pushing that anyway, because even though Juhyun is very talented, I don't really think of him as leadership material compared to Shonu and Wonho. So I felt like those were good picks. Now, what they did with the team, whole different discussion, but I just felt like picking those 2 was the correct option. I did like that.
And as we know from Monsta X, first of all, Shonu is the leader of Monsta X. But I feel like Wonho could also at times take on that role as well. So I think it was good foreshadowing.
I do think that the focus of this episode was definitely on the leadership more than the singing or the performing itself, because it showcases a different part of Shonu and Wonho. I agree. Juhon definitely has that performer characteristic, but he is not exactly a leader material, whereas Shonu was doing pretty good at his position.
Yeah.
The next day, on the 15th, Kihyun's collaboration with Soyu and Kiriboy was released. This one also did well, but not as well as Juwon's in terms of the rings and the coverage.
Episode 7 aired on January 21st. A big chunk of this episode is spent on footage of the teams filming introduction videos of themselves. Segero team is for it, Ojangnam team is not. The groups cut back and we finally watched their dance performances. Onjanam is highly praised for their performance because they are coherent and high energy. Seguro team does a good job of hiding Shotgun's lack of dancing skills and for having a story and highlighting the right people. Well, they put on a little story and it worked, which is good for them. Kinda. They did their best. It could have been worse. In the end, Ojangnam wins this portion, but Seguro wins the overall mission. This means that one of their trainees gets eliminated, and after some deliberation, Mingyeon is chosen as the one to go. And honestly, I remember when we watched these episodes, we were all sitting there being like, what? Yeah. When the first judging happened, because they did not make it obvious that the first, the winner is babada. I don't remember who won the first one. Wasn't the winner of the entire thing. It was just the winner of okay, you won the singing part. You guys won the dancing part. They did not separate that out well for the viewing audience, aka us, because we were all sitting there huh? Didn't they win? Excuse?
Yep.
So again, there is something in the storytelling of this whole show that is just whack. It doesn't work.
Because if multiple times we're sitting there and we're like, oh, actually, that's not what we thought happened. This actually happened. You're doing something wrong then. If 4 people are watching and none of them get the thread, none of them get the narrative, something is the matter.
Yeah, I legitimately was just, while we were watching this show, I was just sitting there and I'm like, am I just stupid? I know that my Korean is non-existent. And I know that I don't watch as much of Korean television as the other ones here, so am I just really, really dumb for not getting this? And then the others were also mildly confused about what was going on. I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. It's just not me. It's not only my fault for not understanding what is going on.
One thing to note from this episode is that there are a lot of guest judges.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
That was also strange.
Let me count. So there was Kiwo, there were the special guests Sonoyoung from GOD and Kain of Brown Eyed Girls. That makes 3. And then there were the singers who will be on the next recording music mission, the new song mission.
All 6 of them?
Yeah, Matt Clown, Kitty Boy, Chuyoung, Jeonggigo, No.Chang, and Vasco, who is now known as Bill Stacks. So in total, that's 9.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
9 judges when we have 10 trainees.
Which is wild.
I don't understand why we need that many judges. I mean, I could understand if they were there to give more diverse, constructive feedback, but I don't think their presence wove into the show as well as they wanted.
Yeah.
Because, we are just given the final results and no reasoning explaining why. How did they vote for each rankings? How many, points did they give for each member?
Mm-hmm.
How they gave the feedback? So on, so on. A lot of the context has vanished.
Yep.
And if we wanted to see their feedback, fair. But it feels like their contribution to the results of this mission has been severed from the episode, and we don't really get why we needed that many judges for this one mission.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, too. There was a singular article, and this obviously ended up not being the case. There was a singular article that also mentioned that members of Boyfriend, a group that was under Starship at the time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they were supposed to come on and be judges or maybe mentors. It was at the very beginning of all the articles being released about this. And it was interesting to me that they never ended up showing up. And I obviously didn't know that until I learned it today because they're not in the show. But I wonder if they were just like, wow, we have a lot of judges. Maybe we don't need Boyfriend too.
You know what? I think they could have just had a Boyfriend as the only guest judge.
Mm-hmm.
That would work.
And I mean, Boyfriend and Monsta X had completely different concepts. So that's maybe why they didn't end up bringing them on. But at the same time, I feel like they could have had something of merit to tell them. They were Starship's most recently debuted boy group. So I did think it was a little odd that they did not ultimately. Of course, Boyfriend did not do well compared to other Starship groups, so maybe that was another reason for them not coming on. I don't know. But I did think it was interesting that it was mentioned and never brought up again. One other thing that I thought was funny in this episode was that there are a handful of clips with the trainees just absolutely drenched in sweat, and then after what can't be more than like 10 minutes, 5 max, they are shown aggressively matte, just like heavily powdered.
The makeup team knew what they were doing.
Yeah, they probably had those giant powder puffs and they just went ham on their faces, which I think is so funny. But yeah, my main gripe with this episode, and again, the whole show, is that it's just really poorly structured. So many cuts back and forth, and the narrative is choppy. It's just very evident in this episode specifically, I feel like, that choppiness. We keep saying it, but it keeps popping up.
Following the conclusion of this mission, the trainees were taken to a K-barbecue place by K-Will so that he could get their morale up a bit. After they have their fill of food, he drops a bombshell on them. A new trainee will be added to the potential debut pool. K-Will literally gets up and pulls IM in to meet them. They obviously do not take well to this, but we see more of that in the next episode. The new rankings will be given in the next episode as well.
On episode 8, which aired on January 28th, was another bit of a bland one, with the most interesting parts being the celebrity collaborators pushing the trainees into the recording booth. New rankings dropped right at the beginning. From 1st to 9th places, Juhon, Wonho, Shonu, Kiyeon, Shapgon, Yuno, Hyungwon, Seokwon, and Minhyuk. New addition, spoiler alert, IM, is not ranked until after the new mission. They are given their 4th mission, another team battle, although this time the format is different. There will be 2 teams that will comprise of trainees and 3 artists that will work together to make a song and perform it in front of a 300-person audience. Team 1 consists of Juyoung, Kittyboy, and MacClown, along with the trainees Wonho, IM, Kiyeon, Juhon, and Seokwon. Team 2 consists of Vasco, Nochang, and Jeonggigo, along with trainees Hyungwon, Shapgon, Shonu, Minhyuk, and Yuno. This group ended with a lot of low-ranking members, by the way. The majority of the episode just shows the prep work that goes into making each song, as well as the difficulty of working with professionals and being a professional yourself. Once all of that is out of the way, the episode opens on K-Will and the trainees behind him on the stage, telling the audience they're about to start before ending the episode.
Ironically. I think that dropping someone they see as their friend, then taking the trainees out to eat, and then adding a new trainee 7 episodes into the show was BS. I really don't think I've ever seen anything like that happen in a show like this. I've seen trainees dropped and then brought back in, but I've never seen a new trainee added. I don't know if that's happened before or after this.
It's definitely not normal.
Right.
It's
yeah.
definitely not a standard procedure.
It's not a positive experience for the trainees or for IM. So, like, I get it. The whole thing is like, this is a cruel debut war. Like, you know? But, it's frustrating. It's kind of a cheap shot, in a way, I feel like. On the other hand, the trainees being upset that the other trainees were eliminated is a little bit silly in my opinion, because it was obvious that those eliminated trainees were not up to par for debuting. Like, if you watch the performances those trainees did, you'd be like, yeah, they struggled, and maybe they're not ready. But I obviously don't expect them to have that clarity when they're in the thick of it. Even fans, though, in particular, I know a lot of people, and this is a little bit of a spoiler for the final episode, but everyone knows that Shopgun is not in Monsta X. It's not that big of a deal. A lot of people were upset about Shopgun not making the debut team. However, it is very obvious that his skills, at least in dancing, I'm not saying his rapping's bad, but at least in dancing, he is not up to par with the rest of the trainees, and they even had to hide that in the last mission, you know? So you have to be realistic, I think, about expectations for people who end up in these groups and in these shows and all that stuff. And I think it was better that he did not end up in the final ranking, but we can talk more about that later.
the new trainee edition was kind of a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
But in hindsight, I think it was the turning point for the group formation.
Mm-hmm.
Because the group had dropped most of the rapper trainees.
Right.
In the first half, and then they probably needed at least one more rapper who could balance that out. I mean, we know Shotgun is a rapper too, but we weren't sure if he would be good enough to stay in the group. He's definitely a rapper material. He's not the ideal idol material compared to the other members.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they were trying to find someone who is more of an all-rounder position who could do a bit of everything. And if you're considering the fact that Starship was trying to put together a boy band who could potentially go more global, IM was pretty much the only English speaker.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Other people.
Yeah.
If he was in the group, he would have possibly taken the translator role and do most of the communication.
Another thing I've always wondered is, was that literally the first time they met IM? How long was he actually at Starship before being put into No Mercy, if any time at all? I find it hard to believe that that was their first time meeting him, but I do feel like their disdain for him looked pretty real. So I don't know. I always go back and forth on what that actually looked like.
So I'm looking it up, and it says that he was added to the No Mercy program later on, and it turns out that he was the only member who was chosen by Starship without an underground trainee period. So yeah, it's very much possible.
Interesting. Huh.
So I think that the last minute decision was because, one, IM has enough potential and good enough skills compared to the eliminated ones. Mm-hmm. 2, he can speak English. And 3, Juan has more of a high-toned rap, whereas IM is much lower.
Mm-hmm.
And he could provide a nice contrast to their music. So he was probably a good candidate. But because they dropped that news bomb with no notice for each side, it came out as a shock to everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because IM later said that he just got a phone call saying, hey, come over and have lunch together. And he was just directed right into this group of 6. And they're like,
wild.
Hey, this is the new trainee who will be joining for your last mission, IM. So, of course it will be a shock to him. And of course it will be a shock to the other trainees. I think that last minute addition was just so unorganized.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Definitely from when they were explaining themselves we accidentally got rid of too many rappers, so we had to bring in, that whole debacle just really drove home how disorganized the show was and how poorly planned. But also, it was the first thing I knew about this show in Monsta X, was this change up with IM. That was the first thing I ever heard.
Ironically
I watched the clip for it. I was like, this is awful. So I will say, I think that might be the biggest legacy of this show.
I think you make a good point.
Out there. Was it awful and really mean? Yes. But otherwise, I don't think that it would have been remembered nearly as well. How many people remember My Doll, or what was the other one? There were a couple other ones where the groups were being formed through the show that I don't think people remember the show. How many people remember how VIX was put together? I do, but
right.
When you think of VIX, do you think of that?
Yeah, I would say the majority of people wouldn't even realize that VIX was put together by a show at this point. It's lost lore to a certain degree.
Whereas I feel like when you think of, at least personally me, when I think of Monsta X, I do think of this show.
The second to last episode aired on February 4th, 2015. The show had already started to show the trainees warming up to IM, but the trend continues in this one as well. This episode focuses on going back and forth between the prep for this new mission and the actual performances in front of the 300-person crowd. After the stages, the crowd votes Giriboy's team the winner. Again, that consisted of Giriboy, Mad Clown, Juyoung, IM, Seokwan, Juhan, and Kihyun. The losing team eliminates Yoonho as a result. The end of the show teases that 2 people will be eliminated in the finale, which will air a week later. So, in my opinion, Giriboy's team should not have won. It was a flat performance that was almost entirely carried by the vocals, and they had Juhan and IM in their group. So it's not to mention Mad Clown and Giriboy, it was not a good performance. And Basco's team, they did have Yoonho's fumble to deal with, which is why he ultimately was eliminated. But comparatively, their energy was huge, and the song was much more coherent and pleasant to listen to, which leads me to believe that they just wanted to drop Yoonho, given IM's addition. But that's my own conspiracy theory. I don't know if that's actually what they were thinking.
At least we'd have an explanation for once.
Mm-hmm. So, the winning group's song was released the next day on February 5th to even less fanfare than the last collab song. So we can see that the show is kind of losing a little steam as it goes on.
The final episode of No Mercy aired on February 11th. There's a very little setup, with the show going straight into the final mission. The final stage is being built. The group will be decided 50-50 by the audience and the celebrity judges. The mission is simple. The trainees are divided into 3 subunits of 3 and perform their stages. The first unit consisted of Kihyun, Seokwan, and Wonho, and they do a rendition of Crush's Hug Me. It's revealed that they had the shortest time to prepare, but overall their sexy concept received mostly favorable reviews from the judges. They did not produce or arrange the song. The second unit consisted of Shonu, Shotgun, and Minhyuk, and they also do a song cover, their pick being Joa by J Park. The group is knocked for the lack of cohesion since Shotgun looks like he's from a different stage, wardrobe-wise. This stage had mixed reviews, with some saying it ended too abruptly and others liking the vibe. They didn't do any music production either.
Finally, Juwon, IM, and Hyungwon performed an original song by Yellow Diamond and Reimer called Interstellar. This stage had the highest praise from the judges. The final stage is a group performance featuring all the trainees. Reimer has written the final song for them and is called 출구는 없어, or No Exit in English. It's a really exciting stage, and the judges praised the trainees for their professionalism and wished them luck in their future endeavors. Clips of the audience submitting their votes fill the space between the end of the song and the announcement of the final members. The members are announced in this order: Juwon, Shonu, Kihyun, Hyungwon, Wonho, IM, and Minhyuk. Therefore, Shotgun and Seokwan are eliminated, and they leave the stage after saying a few comments. It's a bittersweet moment, but the trainees that are about to debut put on a strong face. At the final moment of the episode, Monsta X is announced as the group's name.
Honestly, it seemed like an afterthought. Like they were like, oh, we should tell people what they're called now. By the way.
Yeah.
It was so weird, and just continues to show the poor pacing and formatting of the show overall.
Yeah, it felt a lot like they were spending their budget on hiring idols to be good PR for the show. Like, all of the judges are well-known people. Names. So it feels more like they were like, okay, look at all of these shiny people that we have. Look at the jingle jangle. Instead of actually fleshing out a show. It feels like there wasn't very many studio days where they had a set to be on, which is why the days when they had the challenges were so drawn out, because it felt like they only had like whatever set amount of hours in those locations, and they had to be there and get out of it as soon as possible and get as much done. I don't know, it worked against the show. I feel like it was a lot of budgeting issues from somebody who does not know what the budget of this thing was, but it feels like budgeting issues.
I am curious if those other Mnet survival shows had any overlap in the PDs, because I don't remember Win and Mix and Match being so messy. None of these shows are perfect, obviously, but this one feels particularly messy. So I don't know if they just didn't have much time to put it together or what, because there hasn't been a lot of information about the formation of the show. My biggest issue, I think, though, with this episode is that the subunit work seemed disproportionate amongst the 3. Like we said, the first 2 units performed covers, and then the third unit
only
performed,
one gets to sing an original song.
Yeah, exactly. And I was very confused about that, because for all we know, the other 2 units knew those songs beforehand, and I'm not saying that that means they didn't have to like work hard to get the song sounding good. But if you know the song beforehand, it will be easier to learn how to sing it properly, you know? So to have IM and Joohyun have to write their own lyrics on top of learning a completely new song, it just was like, what do you mean? What do you mean they're the only ones that have to do that? Obviously, they're rappers, so there's that. I think Shopgun might have written his rap for Choa. I don't remember. He did? Okay, yeah. So there's that. But still, it felt disproportionate, and I don't think they showed much of the process for preparing for these stages, which I mentioned before. It's weird that the 10th episode felt so rushed when there's so much dragging in the episodes before it, when really it's like, this is probably the one we want to see the process for, you know? We don't know for sure what happens prior to these stages, but I don't know. I was not keen on the fact that they were just like, here are 3 stages. We're not going to show anything about how they got to this point. But yeah, I found the ending to be pretty bittersweet because at this point you do have somewhat of a connection to the members, and to the trainees, I should say. So Seokwan and Shopgun not making it is like, aw, that's kind of sad. I do think Shopgun was pretty upset. Like, he had a look in his eye that was like, are you kidding me? I'm not debuting. Which is understandable. But again, I don't think he was cut out for Monsta X. I think that you made a really good point, Serin, that they needed someone to differentiate from Joohyun, so adding IM was the best option for that. Because there were comments throughout the show of Shopgun and Joohyun not sounding the same, but they were similar. Too similar to put into one group. So I was pleased with the final lineup.
It definitely felt sudden. It felt very abrupt. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, here it is. Here's their name. Off they go.
Yep.
I have a question to the producers. You could have live streamed the last episode. Why didn't you?
Ooh, interesting.
Because if you live stream it, you could have gathered more reaction from the viewers. Mm-hmm. See who has more support from the general public, not just a smaller sample from the population.
Mm-hmm. Was that common at this time? It's 2015. I'm trying to think.
No, because we had several more auditions before that. Superstar K, for one instance.
Did they do live finales, though? That's what I'm curious about.
The whole top 10 process was on live.
Oh, that's interesting.
Live televised. Yeah, and we got to send our votes through phone text, and then we did a whole countdown before the votes ended, and then the results were announced like a couple minutes later. People found out who was eliminated on that same day.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
I don't know how popular this show was, but because Superstar K is also from Mnet, so if they were able to do Superstar K, I presume that they could have probably done the same with No.Mercy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
It almost made me wonder if they had a specific lineup they had considered in the first place, and they didn't want the public vote to change that. Because I'm pretty sure Shotgun might have had a pretty stable fan base on his own. Maybe they were afraid that Shotgun might be joining the group and some other member they were counting on didn't.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a possibility that IM's debut might have been sabotaged out of the backlash.
Interesting. You were going to say something, OldR?
I was just going to say that, unfortunately, with this show, I have more questions about the production than the show itself. I'm more interested in the mechanics of the behind the scenes and all that setup more than the show.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many questionable things.
There's so many questions, including the name of the group and the name of the audition.
Well, I will say the name of the group was chosen by fans. It was a poll or something. They mentioned it at the end of one of the episodes.
Well, the thing is, when we watched the actual show, there was no explanation behind that.
There was one episode where they said, go and
Even
vote.
the members weren't notified what their group name would be until they watched this episode.
Yes.
I just think that maybe they could have started off the episode with, so the group's name has been finalized to Monsta X before they proceeded with their mission.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or if they were announcing the name Monsta X at the end, they could have probably added an explanation behind how that name was chosen and what it's supposed to mean. They just said Monsta X the end.
Mm-hmm. I actually found a Yahoo Entertainment article where the members of Monsta X specifically talked about the show. So let me just say a few lines from that. Ki-hyun said, because it was so hard. It was too hard, and I struggled a lot emotionally to get through the next stage. It was really just the hardest time of my life. Min-hyuk said, we were formed through that group, but we received a lot of pressure and stress during that time. All of the bad things. My gosh. Yeah, I think it was not a good way to make a group. I think it was not worthy, says I.M. That's wild.
Poor thing. He got the brunt of the criticism because he was an afterthought.
They say that they don't regret it because, you know, obviously they did well. But there you go. They really struggled, unsurprisingly.
The name means mon, which is the French for my, and sta means star, and X is the unknown. So,
yeah.
My mysterious star.
Kind of. I remember there was, I don't think it's at the end of this episode, it might have been like a video that they posted on their YouTube channel or something like that, but Min-hyuk didn't even know what the name really was. They had written it on these like exactly. Post-it notes, and he had written Monster instead of Monsta, and he had to like cross it out. And it's like, you're not even telling the members of the group what the name is. Like, it was so funny to me. But
apparently, the name Monsta X was created by Starship's vice president, Kim Kang-hyo.
Oh, there it is. Do you know what the other options were? I don't think I've ever seen what they were.
So it seems like one of the names that were proposed was Monsta, just Monsta. And then he suggested putting an X behind it.
Interesting.
If the raw footage of this show still exists,
we want to see it.
Yeah, somebody should just recut it.
It will answer a lot of our questions.
Make like a which I forget what his name is.
The Snyder Cut?
The Snyder Cut of No Mercy.
Oh, that's so funny.
That would be great.
Side note, 2 of the songs, Interstellar and No Exit in this episode, end up on Monsta X's debut album.
Yes. Obviously they re-recorded them, but yeah. So, where are the eliminated trainees now? After elimination, Kwangji was quiet except for a personal Instagram page that he updates occasionally. He enlisted in 2018, and as recent as April of this year, 2024, he was posting pictures of him and his wife. So, congrats to him. He also has a YouTube channel, but it only has a couple of videos on it and a few cooking shorts. As far as Yusu goes, it seems that the only thing that is known about him is that he completed his military service. I couldn't find an Instagram page, I couldn't find anything really about him, so we hope he's doing well. Oh, you did?
So his whereabouts right now is that he is a personal trainer. Apparently, he might be still dabbling in music for somehow. So he was the runner-up of the 2022 Mr. International Korea. And so I also found his profile for that contest. So it says his name is Kim Yusu. He listed his occupation as musician and personal trainer. And his motto was, let's become better today than yesterday's me. So it's like a direct translation, so it doesn't seem to relate that well in English, but so it's just, let's become a better me than I was yesterday.
That's great. We're very happy for him.
I am skimming through his Instagram. Yep, he definitely has the same face. But he is very buff. I almost couldn't recognize him.
Okay, so next up is Mingyun. He debuted in the WM Entertainment boy group On and Off as their lead vocalist and sub-rapper in early 2017. He went by MK for a while before switching back to his real name. In late 2017, he participated in YG's survival show Mix 9 along with the rest of his group. That is one we should look into and do an episode on because Mix 9 has some crazy stuff attached to it. The group has done quite a bit, but to finish off his part, we'll just mention that he enlisted at the end of 2021 and was discharged on June 20th, 2023.
So it looks like after No Mercy ended, Yoonho got into A-Team Entertainment. In 2017, 2 years after VAV's debut, he joined the group under the stage name Ano. VAV disbanded on February 29th, 2024, and just a month later, he made his solo debut. Our second to last elimination was Shotgun. Of all the eliminated trainees, he's the only one to continue with Starship Entertainment and release music. He also participated in Show Me the Money 5 in 2016 and made it up to the 8th round, one before the final, before getting eliminated. He did release a handful of songs with Starship before he announced that he was leaving the company in late 2022. He continues to post fairly regularly on Instagram and uploads pretty consistently on his SoundCloud, which is linked in the doc. Finally, let's talk about Seokwon. Following the conclusion of No Mercy, he enlisted in the army in 2016. As far as we know, he was a trainee at Starship for a little bit longer before he eventually made his way into Rain's company, called Rain Company. Probably around 2018, 2019, we don't know for certain. In December of 2020, it was announced that he would be debuting in Rain's new boy group under the stage name Tan. Cypher debuted on March 15, 2021. 2 years later, in August of 2023, he would leave Cypher, and we were not able to find any more updates on him. So we hope he's doing okay out there, somewhere, living his life. Obviously, the Monsta X members have done very well for themselves, but that's a separate conversation we can have at a later time.
So, that is the story of how Monsta X was formed, out of a kind of mediocre survival show. However, the members obviously have a lot of charisma and talent, and they were able to make a name for themselves through their artistry. Obviously, we haven't gotten into their debut, or Wonwoo's departure, or anything like that, but maybe one day we will do a deep dive on them. Till then, JR, take us away.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, then please make sure to rate, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends about us. If you want to interact with us or just see more of our content, then you can follow the links in the description to our website, social media platforms, and coffee. Also, don't forget that our next episode comes out on December 15th, 2024. Thanks everyone. Bye!
Bye!
다음에 봐요.
안녕.